Hello, and welcome to First Draft for the month of September. I can't believe it's already here. I am Julia Kelly, and I am a historical and contemporary romance author, and I am joined by my regular partners in crime, as well as a special guest today. So we're going to start with our special guest, actually. Leanne, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, I write under A.L. Parks, and right now I have a standalone out that's called Strangers. It was my first book that came out about just exactly a year ago, and I have a series that has 3 books out right now with a 4th coming in October. It's the Return to Me series, and the books are The Return, Return to Newport, and Lauren's Return. So,
yeah, wonderful. So, Alexis Ann, you want to tell us who you are and what you do?
Hi guys, my name is Alexis Ann. I write contemporary and erotic romance. Right now you can get the Storm Insider teas for free in the teas box that just came out.
And while she's very excited, we're going to move on. Last but not least, so just a moment. Last but not least, we have Mary Chris.
Hi, I'm Mary Chris Escobar. I write women's fiction, and my most recent novel was How to Be Alive. It came out end of June, so that's available everywhere now. And I am currently working on a novella following along with 2 of the side characters in that story, hoping to have that out by November.
Wonderful. So we have a question and answer section that is all ready to go on your Google Hangout. If you're watching live, if you're recorded, you can always tweet us or send us a message on Facebook or through our Google Plus page. But we wanted to go ahead and open this with a general about research and writing. That's what we're focusing on tonight in the romance and women's fiction genres. And so we're going to start broad and then kind of narrow down and talk specifically about what each of us do when it comes to researching. So I think we're just going to go ahead and jump right in, talking about how research applies directly to romance and directly to what you write. So Lexi, you want to start us off?
Well, research is super important because if you're not authentic in what you're writing about, then people get pulled out of the story. And so more often than not, I'm researching about people and places and events. But because I do write erotic romance, I do a lot of research into sexual things as well.
She's knocking that out right now because she sent me a message earlier saying, am I going to get asked about sex? And the answer is no, because she just brought it up. So it's all out there.
I'm fair game, people. Bring it up.
Leanne, how about you? How do you see research fitting into your writing and into your writing process?
a lot like Alexa said, you have to be authentic, and I think there's a really fine line between having artistic expression and kind of pushing the bounds of it, especially in romance, because we kind of deal in a lot of fantasy. You know, all of our characters fall deeply in love. You know, they have the best sex ever, and so there's a lot of, you know, fantasy involved in that kind of suspending belief. And but research, a lot of people have definite ideas about, you know, if you're going to say something about cancer, you better know what type of cancer or something like that, because people are going to pick up on things that they know about, and they're going to let you know when you're wrong. So as much as you can, you should at least get, at least for me, I try to be as authentic as I can and know the answers and express them truthfully, so that I don't get the, you know, that would never happen kind of thing, or that's not true kind of situation.
How about you, Mary Chris? How are you approaching it when you sit down to write a book in the broader sense? And then we'll talk about the specifics in a minute.
Yeah, I think I love what Leanne said about, you know, we're writing stories where we're asking people to sort of suspend some belief in some areas, and that's ultimately what they want. I mean, they want to go along for the big story and the big romance, the really great sex, you know, all those things. But what we want to make sure that we're doing is keeping things really accurate, so that we don't take them out of that big story that we've wrapped them up in. So, you know, if you're going along and you get a little detail wrong, that would be something that somebody else would know was wrong. That could pull them out of this world and this story that you're creating. So I think I approach it from always trying to be accurate, so that I don't lose readers. I don't want to get a date wrong, or if I'm writing about a city, I don't want to talk about like something that actually isn't in that city or streets that don't connect in a certain way, because I want readers to get lost in my overall story, not hung up in the details. So that's where it comes in for me.
Yeah, I think it's not ripping the readers out of the story is one of the most important things. And obviously there is some artistic license that you can take, but by the same token, just in the same way that contemporary readers would be able to pick up on something that doesn't ring true, I know with historicals, as a reader and then also as a writer, if there's something that doesn't sound right, I've read so much historical at this point, and I also did my degree in Victorian British social history. If it doesn't sound right, and if I pick up on it, you lose a little bit of credibility with your reader, and I think it's very hard to start gaining that back, especially when it's basic details. And sometimes it's as simple as writers aren't perfect and something slips by us. We are writing about people other than ourselves. It is not, as some people like to think, writing strictly about your own stories. When you write romance, they are fictional people and they are fictional scenarios, but at the same point, you don't want to kind of break that reader's trust by not getting the things right that should be not easy to get right, but you should be able to research and look into. So we all write different stuff. Does somebody want to take a stab at how you approach researching when you sit down and you have page one, or even before then? What are you doing to make sure that your genre and your book is kind of moving in the right direction, research-wise? Who wants to take this first one? I feel like the teacher when I have to call on somebody. So
I'll go first.
Go for it.
One of the big questions, because I write contemporary romance, so this is something that's happening right now, is how fantasy-driven is my story going to be? Because like with my series Tease, I wanted it to be that extra level. I wanted it to be a little bit fantasy-driven, a little bit fantastical. So do I really want to set it in a real location, or do I want to set it in a fictional location? And that's one of the big questions that I always ask myself when I'm starting a series, is because if it's a real location, you need to do a lot of research, or you have to have lived there yourself so that it can be really authentic. Because, as we were saying, if you're talking about restaurants or places or sporting events even that don't take place in that town or wouldn't be authentic for that town, people who live there are going to feel pulled out of it. But by the same token, that is some of the greatest, richest stuff that we have in some of our stories. You feel like you've been to New York City or you've been to Edinburgh in the story over the course of reading it, because the author can give you that extra slice of life along the way. Or your other option is to go completely fictional so that you don't have to stop and do that research along the way and make sure that every little thing is perfect. So those are your two options in my mind when you're getting started with something contemporary.
Now, Mary Chris, you actually live in the place that you've written a lot about, so do you want to tackle maybe a little bit of the authenticity of a place that you know?
Definitely, and I can definitely tackle that from the perspective that Alexis was just kind of talking about. Like, I kind of do that because I didn't want to put in the work to pull out like a street map of New York and try to figure out, even though I've been there, I don't know it very well, and so I didn't want to do that much research. So I did set my books. So far, they've all been set where I lived, although my most recent novel does have a fictional town, because I didn't want to tie it directly to kind of the place I had in my mind. But yes, I mean, I think that really helps make my writing process easier, because I do know the city really well, and I live in Richmond, Virginia, so I'm writing my books set there, and I'm able to include local restaurants and include little details about the city that I've had readers who live in my city say that was amazing, like it was really cool to read about these places that I've actually been to, and yet if you don't know it, it doesn't matter, because you aren't familiar with it. And so yeah, that's definitely been, to be quite honest, a decision I've made to avoid having to do quite a bit of research, to just go with something I know really well so I can spend my time crafting the story and not researching. It won't last forever.
It won't last forever. You can only write.
At some point, I'll have to move out of the city I live in. My characters will have to move out of it.
I did like a hybrid of that. In The Return, the city or the town up in the mountains that it's really kind of centered around is Ridgemont, Colorado. And there is no Ridgemont, Colorado. And if there is, it's not my Ridgemont, Colorado, and so it has no association with it. But there isn't one as far as I know. But I also talk about Newport, Rhode Island, and Colorado Springs, which is where I grew up. But even growing up in Colorado Springs, with Lauren's Return, they go to Colorado Springs and they go to some very specific places like the Garden of the Gods and a pizza place called Fargo's that's been there for years and years and years that I used to go to, and some other places like that. And I actually had to go back and do research because I know that since I've lived there and the beginning of, I left in '91, things have changed. And so I had to make sure that Fargo's was still open. I had to, and actually the Garden of the Gods, the visitor center is not where it was when I grew up. It's moved back way out onto the street. And so I had to do some research and contact some people that still live there and stuff like that to make it more authentic. But I think that you can actually use a real place that you've never been because in Strangers, I use New York City, and I have never been there before in my life. And I was hoping the whole time, I'm like, I hope that what I see on TV with, things actually, the Upper East Side is kind of like this and stuff like that. Like, please, no, I don't want to hear about that.
So I actually just read her manuscript, and it's set in the Upper East Side. So I was just like, here are all the things that you need to know about New York that you probably never wanted to know before. And then I realized that it's probably way more information that she needed. So sorry about that. Yeah, I think that a couple things when you approach, so contemporary and the contemporary stuff, absolutely. If you're going to write about a place that you haven't been before, I wrote about Jackson, Wyoming, when I was writing with Alexis in this anthology that's coming out next week, thankfully. We're really excited to actually get it out in the world after talking about it for months. I've never been. I have friends who've been. I have friends who've gone for ski season, and luckily we set our story in ski season. So it was easy to kind of shoot them a text message and be like, hey, so don't ask why, but I need to know X, Y, and Z. You can't do that when you're writing Victorian historicals. You're writing about the 1920s in Manhattan, so you end up relying really heavily on research books and blogs and articles and various things like that. But the other thing that you end up doing is you do some world building, because there are some things that you can guess at, you can research, you can replicate, and then there's some that you're just going to fill in. And I think that that's consistent across the board, no matter what genre you're writing in, whether you're doing paranormals or doing, contemporary, doing women's fiction, doing westerns. There is going to be some element of creating your own world in here, because again, it's fiction, it's not nonfiction, it's not strict fact, and sometimes it's necessary to fudge the details a little bit because you need it for your story. But again, you have to kind of balance where are you going between trust, keeping the trust of your reader, and making sure that you are telling a compelling story. So you never want to go so wild and out there that people feel like you're just lying to them. But there are some things that you may have to fill in the details for. So the practical side. How do you research, other than just looking up Wikipedia articles?
Do you see Lexi frowning right now?
Yes. Not happy. By the way, I want you guys to know, I didn't show them this beforehand. This is how historical authors research. I've got a whole stack of these guys. My apartment is not very big, but I've researched books like crazy. So I'm going to tell you right now, find a research place. Find a used bookstore. It's really helpful. But if you can't go to used bookstores and you can't find research books on Victorian dresses like crazy, what are you doing when you're looking for that little detail that's going to make or break your story? What are you looking for when you're looking at street maps and stuff like that? Mary Chris, you want to kick us off?
Well, this is very difficult for me to say as someone who works in higher education, but I do mostly Google, which you should not do when you're writing a research paper. Absolutely. But I feel like contemporary, that's a really good place to start, because you just don't want people to fall out of the story, and you want something to be kind of what common knowledge would be. So I'll start out with Google usually, and then if I need to go deeper, I'll go a little bit deeper on that. But depends on the issue. But I mostly am using kind of popular websites that I feel like reflect what general or the general knowledge would be.
Lexi, you want to go next, and then I know Leanne's got a very specific answer that I'm gonna ask her about here in a moment.
I'm kind of in the same. Are we getting a lot of feedback right now, or is that just me?
Yeah. No, it's not. Just
no. Okay. We'll see what we can see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting it on this end, so hopefully the record is fine.
Okay. Cool. Okay. I'm also an academic, so I get very specific about research. I do like Google. I do like Wikipedia for very simple facts. But especially if you're doing something that is very specific, I think you have to treat it very sensitively and research it like somebody who does research. And so for me, that's visiting the library. That's talking to experts. I'm writing another series with academic adventures with these in archaeology, which is what my degree is in, and I wanted to bring that up later in the subject. But I think the more specific you are, the more specific your research needs to be, and you need to be sensitive to that fact, including researching how to do research.
And Leanne, I want to specifically get into kind of why you're coming up to my neck of the woods at the end of the month, because I know that you are looking at a very specific type of research and a very specific way of gathering your information.
Right. I actually write under another pen name, LM Spark. I'm right now. I don't have anything under that. It's all research at this point. It is based on within the FBI. And so, because of contacts that I have, I've been able to meet with field agents and other contacts to get information about how they actually switch. Which really is invaluable. I figured this out because I started writing the first couple of chapters, and then I went and talked to my first contact, and nothing I was even remotely what I can actually do. So I'm coming up with one of my field agents at the end of the month, so that I can go through and see what they can do. The problem is that with that research going to there's certain things within the FBI that they can't tell. So a lot of their procedures they can't tell me how they do. So I get to be creative about those. And so we have this kind of back and forth. If I ask a question, then they'll say, "We'll just be creative with it." So that's kind of the fun part of it. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is ask people. People want to help writers get information in their books and get it right and stuff, and they want to help you. So I think that's huge, and that's what I did. I found somebody that had an interest in the FBI, and I just worked it. So.
Sounds like being a journalist in my day job type of work. So approaching research from a historical side, there's the big stack of research books that's sitting next to me, and there's maybe not the things that you would expect if you were looking to build a world in Victorian Britain. Again, I do have a degree in it, so that definitely helps, but what it really helps with is kind of the social attitudes of the time and the way that people approached various kind of types of things that they did and reasons why they did things. And then for the rest of the stuff, I'm very, very lucky. I live in New York City, so I live near the Strand bookstore, which is this phenomenal used bookstore, and they end up with a bunch of stuff like this that shows you color plates and also line drawings of fashion plates. So for stuff as simple as clothes, it's very easy to kind of dig in and get some good information, get some inspiration, for what's going on with with your characters, and those are the details that I think specifically in historical people are really focused on. Interiors, carriages. People know, you know, whether things were whether somebody would have gotten into an open-top carriage or a small, you know, barouche or something along those lines. So it's those details, and kind of you will start to build an arsenal of books and websites and blogs, and the more that you Google research and do all these things, I have an Evernote file that's just kind of general historical research ideas that I just go through and kind of throw articles in, and I have the web clipper on my computer, and it just allows me to kind of pull things as they come up. It's really, really helpful because you never know when something's going to come in handy. So just as with any contemporary or any other type of research, I think that it's reading a lot and exposing yourself to a lot, and kind of being aware that anything can be used for a novel. So if you pay attention and you think something might have potential, it could be a huge help to kind of making sure that you get those things done. So apparently we were getting some feedback earlier, and I'm hoping that we're not anymore. Is that right, Alexis?
It sounds good. It sounds, yeah.
Okay. We may have dropped out of a whole section of our broadcast, but you know, technical difficulties. It happens to the best of us, so we'll see. When do you know that you've done enough research, and when do you know that you're no longer procrastinating and just putting off actually putting words on a page? Do you guys have a general way that you kind of gauge that?
It's usually a gut feeling for me. Okay, maybe it's me because I'm hearing myself twice.
I hear you twice too.
I hear you twice too.
Not. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem child, which is going to be a real problem because I can't drop off the broadcast. I'm like Lord High Commissioner over here. I know. Let me see if this helps.
Nate says it's everyone but you.
Well, we'll try this and see how it works.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
It was Julia's fault.
I'm just going to keep drinking and not actually respond to that.
All right. So for me, it's a gut feeling. Usually, I keep worrying about whatever it is I'm working on until I've done enough research, and then all of a sudden I feel okay, I can move on. So if you're still worrying that maybe you should do more research or what you're saying isn't authentic, it's probably for a reason, and you should keep doing your research.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think if you're reading it and you're feeling like I haven't done enough, and someone's going to read this and find a hole in it or a problem with it, if you know that kind of, it is hard to describe, it's kind of a gut feeling. If you have that nagging feeling like, I think somebody who like really got this would not think I had done enough research, then you have to go back. But I think at the point, you know, you feel like most people could pick it up, and you'll get stuck on it if it's not right. Like you'll keep coming back to it in your revision. So I think it's a non-answer, but you just kind of know that it's done.
I think there's a problem with trying to over-research too, and trying to make it so authentic that you kind of get lost in the story, because really, you know, some of the research just doesn't matter. I mean, somebody's going to come up to you and say, well, you know, nobody puts their coat on using their left hand first. It's always on the right side, or, you know, stupid little things like that. Then, yeah, there's some things that you can get bogged down in the research and go, it has to be so specific and so correct, and so, you know, I can't make any mistakes. Then at some point you've just got to say, somebody is always going to find an issue with what I'm writing, because I'm not an expert in this field, and so I'll just hope that I've done enough and can take the rest, and they're going to just kind of brush it off because it's not that big of a deal. Or maybe that's the way, like with The Return, Jake is a fireman, and so I had to learn about, you know, procedures and stuff, because he's not just a fireman, he's a fire chief, and so how would they approach a scene and things like that. And I think I could really just research the heck out of it and get, you know, 5 different verifications that this is the way it's done, but at the end of the day, as long as it's pretty much the way it was done, or this is how, procedures are typically done, and yeah, I could kind of see it happening that way at somebody else's department, then I think that at some point you just have to write the story and, and hope that you've done your research, because otherwise it's just, you're gonna get bogged down in it all.
I think it's interesting that you brought up.
Go for it.
I think it's interesting that you brought up over-researching, because Leanne and I have both talked about, she has a law background and I have an archaeology background, and we've both written stories that play into both of those backgrounds, and sometimes we get notes back saying that our research, our realism is too real, and we need to pull back and let the fiction and the story just kind of be, and we don't need to be quite so authentic.
The reality is many professions are in fact boring in the day-to-day. Yeah.
Most people don't care about X, Y, and Z. You can let that go.
Right.
Yeah. That's really hard, because in like a courtroom setting, it's how realistic do I want to be before people are going, what? Because I mean, courtrooms basically boring, really boring stuff. But so but to me it was always fascinating. So it's like, oh, okay. But I think along with what Alexis was saying, I always love to get the remarks too of, especially the people that say an attorney would never talk like that, and I'm like, I talk like that all the time. What are you talking about?
So I have to confess, I am a total over-researcher. So I have a method. I don't know if it works, but this is what I do. If there is a new topic or story or something that I want to write about, I set myself aside a couple of weeks and I say I'm just going to do a really crazy deep dive into this. And I'm going to read everything I can read on it. It's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to write. And at the point where I get through a few books or I get through a whole stack of articles or something, and I feel like if I don't write, I'm going to go crazy, that's usually the time when it's the right time for me to start writing. And that's a lot of it has to do with, like, if I feel like I can get through a scene, like an everyday average scene where I don't have to look up basic facts or anything like that, and I can describe the clothes and I can describe what they were going to do, and I can have reasonable confidence that it fits with the setting of the story, it's time for me to start writing. Because I do a lot of inline putting stuff in brackets, and Alexis and Mary Chris have both seen this because they've been beta readers for me. I put stuff in brackets, and I'll just say I'll fill it in later and deal with it later. And I don't like leaving big chunks of scenes unwritten, because to me that it just doesn't work with the way that my mind works. But what does work is I haven't really decided what county in England this person's from. Just put county in brackets, and it's fine, and I'll figure it out at some other point. I sent my characters to the opera at some point, which is such a historical cliche, and I needed to make sure that Verdi was alive when they and producing operas when they went to the opera, because they mentioned what opera they were going to, and so little stuff like that. If it's a really quick lookup, I might let myself do it. I also have a bad habit of falling down the Wikipedia/Google/academic article rabbit hole, and suddenly I'll go from like shoes, Victorian shoes, and suddenly I'll end up with like the Contagious Diseases Act in the 18. So it's just one of those things where you have to be careful and you have to pull back, because at some point you got to write the damn story. So I do know that sometimes it is procrastination, and sometimes being naturally curious people, we do kind of launch ourselves into these stories and go, oh, wait a minute. And it's a little bit of the equivalent of the dog and Up being like squirrel, and you just get distracted completely and your night's just shot. So I do think that Leanne's right. There is an argument that sometimes we do over-research.
I'm just wondering if anybody is at all shocked that Julia is an over-researcher.
Yeah, shocking.
Nobody.
Not very good. Thought I was going to be an academic for years. But it's true, when it's fascinating to you, it's not necessarily interesting to everybody else, and especially your readers, who really don't need to know a detailed history of the zipper. I mean, really, you can do without it.
It's like anything else that in writing. At some point, you have to put away the critiques, you have to put away the technical stuff, you have to put away the research, and you just have to let yourself get lost in the fictional world, and you can go back and fact check later.
It's true. That's what editing's for.
Exactly.
Exactly. There's so many times that I've started writing, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have no idea what this is, and then you go quick and look something up and do like quickie research. So sounds good.
So, what are the strangest things you guys have had to research? I don't know who wants to jump in first. I mean, I could just call on Alexis Ann and let her kind of go on this one, but we'll see. We'll see what she says.
I can go really quickly because I don't really have anything particularly strange to research. So, probably, I guess if we look at it from the angle of like, what would if somebody looked at your Google? Would they be totally like confused about or concerned about or have questions about? In my very first novel, I had, or actually in two of my novels. Anyway, I was writing about a character who was pregnant, so I have never been pregnant, so I have no idea like at what stage certain things happen, like or yeah. So I had to Google a lot about pregnancy, and I, had to let my husband know that I was Googling a lot about pregnancy in my book, lest he pick up the computer and was like, I started typing in something else, like to look up a good porter beer, and was like, wait, what is this? That's probably the one thing that I've had to like warn people that I've been reading. It's not very interesting.
And that is a valid point, because we joke all the time about like the FBI is clearly watching us because we've Googled in one day how to hide a body, what sex positions to do things in, how to asphyxiate someone, and 12 other. Where's Cairo? How do I get there? Do I need a passport?
Yeah, that
I will say sometimes.
Go ahead, Mary. Go ahead.
I was just going to say sometimes I do like have a random thought about something I want to research in the middle of my work day, and I have to either stop myself or pick up my phone because I'm like I can't Google that at work. But like I'll go like reach for it, and then I'm like, no, probably should pick up the phone. Probably shouldn't put that in my search history at work.
Well, along with what Alexis was just saying, I think that the craziest thing that I've probably researched is I didn't know what it would look like if somebody was like ripped in half and they were like disemboweled. And so I like looked up pictures so that, because I'm visual and I have to see pictures and stuff. So I'm looking at all these pictures trying to describe this, and I'm like, oh, I'm so going to prison.
You just come work in news like I do.
It was like my husband was like, what are you looking at? I'm like, it's not porn, so what are you complaining about?
Yeah, those internet search histories are wicked. So I'm gonna say mine before I let our romantic erotic romance writer loose on this question. She's looking innocent, and I know she's not. I know she's not, because we've had full conversations about this. She just doesn't. So there have been a couple of random things, but my favorite was I got so excited. I really want to write about birth control in my stories, if at all possible, because it's something that I feel very strongly about, and I feel very strongly about access. I feel that way about contemporaries. I also feel that way about historicals, because not everybody had a really large family. I know that there was birth control in some form or another. May not have been great. So I was just like, you know what? I'm writing this story about the 1920s. My heroine is an independent modern woman. She's going to use birth control. And you know what? Totally researchable. So I ended up Googling common birth control practices in 1920s New York, and sure enough, I found out about diaphragms, which I hadn't heard about since high school sex ed class, very awkwardly taught by my football coach. And so I kind of went into all this reading, and I went into, how they were made and how they were legal and blah, blah, blah. And then the next day I was so excited about it. Poor Mary Chris was on her lunch break and got on Gmail, and she was just like the wrong time. And I was just like, I found out about this really cool thing. I'm going to tell you everything. And just like basically blasted through the history of birth control in the 1920s. And awesome. It was the most lunchtime conversation ever, and I'm pretty sure I did it to Alexis also. And it's just one of those things that's like, this is going to be a really big character point, and it matters. And by the way, birth control, guys, that's awesome. So there.
It is awesome. It's totally awesome.
Totally.
Birth control is important.
This is what writers get excited about, guys. Research.
You know, I'm going to admit that I realize that I'm actually kind of lazy with research sometimes because I have the benefit of my own background and my own travels, and then my husband who used to work in news and used to travel the world, and so a lot of the time I just go, hip hip. So what happens in this town, and what happens in this really seedy hotel, and what's under the hood of this car, and which kind of gun would my character be holding? And I just take his word for it, and Leanne's nodding her head vehemently because we talked about this once that we both do that.
You have encyclopedias you're living with.
Oh yeah, my husband's Navy, so so traveled the world, and so same thing as Alexis. It's great.
It's very handy to have built-in encyclopedias in your house. I'm not going to lie that I tell him all the time that this is very beneficial to me as a writer, but he's so handy. And we're not going to go into how that works with erotica.
There's still a story there.
Now, I did tell... What was that? Sorry, you broke up.
I said you have to fill in around the sex scenes, right? There's got to be a story.
If there isn't a good romance, I mean, what's the point of writing all this sex? I mean, you got to feel invested in the characters, and so that's what I do.
Exactly.
Okay,
but
Nate on here to actually see how much research they do.
I shall now address the elephant in the room, the sex research. Now, I did admit at RWA that a lot of my research actually comes from Tumblr, because Tumblr is a fantastic sexual resource. If you don't already know this and you're into writing romance or erotica, or you just really like porn, Tumblr is a great place to go and see beautiful black and white, wonderful images, to research bondage, BDSM, all kinds of wonderful, interesting things, and a lot of that can take you to other resources if you're interested in that kind of stuff. So a lot of my ideas and inspiration do actually come from Tumblr. Occasionally, just very occasionally, you do have to test a few positions here, and they're smiling at me right now. You do have to test a few positions to make sure that they're feasible. I mean, come on.
It's called choreography.
It is. We're doing choreography.
Just
Name
like
that movie.
Yeah, I think the common misconception, I've talked to a few erotica writers, and the common misconception is that they're kinky, crazy, ridiculous people who are just like slung up from some dungeon somewhere. And the reality is that there are some people who are interested in the lifestyle who write about it, and there are some people who do a hell of a lot of research and have a very open mind and like writing these stories. And you know what? That's awesome. There is always a jam-packed BDSM lecture at every single RWA, standing room only. And not surprising, it's a popular area of the genre, and to be quite honest, if I can research about, you know, Victorian shoes, why shouldn't somebody be able to write research about BDSM? I'm not a Victorian woman. Somebody else doesn't have to be a practitioner to write about it.
Yeah, exactly. In all seriousness, if you're writing erotica, it isn't all just fun and games and silliness and something that you actually practice. It is a lot of research, and if you aren't authentic in what you're writing about, especially in sexual situations, because there are a lot of people who are very into the fetishes and kinks that they practice, it isn't just fantasy. Sometimes erotica and erotic romance is fantasy, and you're going there to get away from your real life. But sometimes this is very real stuff, and you have to be very sensitive to what areas you're picking about writing in and how much research and authenticity you are bringing to what you're writing. It is a very serious thing. Which is why I don't write BDSM. I'm fascinated by it, but I don't want to do the research. It's not something that I practice. So that is why I specifically avoid BDSM in the writing that I specifically do.
Yeah, you definitely make choices based on what you want to research and what you're interested in your writing, and that's going to inform it, just as it would any.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I started out as straight contemporary, and now I'm kind of moving into romantic suspense, and then pure suspense and thriller over on the LM Spark side. But it is something that you really have to be interested in. I love reading historical romances, but there is no way in the world I would ever want to write one because it is so research intensive and stuff. And so yeah, I'll read about it, but I wouldn't want to write it because of that reason. But I love going into the romantic suspense because I like the law enforcement side and the action packed and what type of gun would you use and what would really happen when you shoot it. And I mean, I had a friend come over that had goggles, and there were 2-3 different kinds, so he brought them all over so that I could see the differences between the basic all the way up to the really high end stuff, which is neat because then when you're describing it, you can actually you know what you're talking about and stuff like that. So and I thought it was really interesting and stuff. So I like and I go out and shoot guns just to see what kind of different types of guns what somebody my size that would be a woman would feel like shooting a gun that wasn't used to it, how much of a kickback there would be and things like that and stuff. So I like that type of research. So.
Basically, she's the most badass out of all of us, so,
What I am. You're right.
I totally tried to shoot a gun once. No, screaming in the other direction.
What was that, Alexis?
I said I totally tried to shoot a gun once, but didn't, and then ran screaming in the other direction. I could totally write about that.
It's so going to be a character in my next book. Alexis.
Call me. We'll talk.
So I'm a little fearful that we may have lost Mary Chris at this point. She looks quite frozen on my screen, but I think
Mary Chris
were plagued by some technical difficulties, as we have been in the past occasionally. So
I can see her. She's moving.
She's moving? Oh, good.
Yeah.
I feel very deprived now. Well,
we're here.
You're here. Beautiful. Wonderful. Well, so we're nearing the 45-minute mark, so perhaps now if we want to start kind of wrapping things up, we'll try to keep this under an hour, unless anybody has anything to add about kind of best practices, what they do when it comes to researching.
I was going to add one thing. When it comes to medical conditions or psychological conditions, some people like to use them as tropes, as easy ways to add wedges between characters. If you're going to use manic depression or very sensitive, very serious medical conditions, psychological conditions like that, make sure that you understand what you're talking about and that you've done your research and that you're sensitive to the fact that there are a lot of people out there suffering from these conditions. It's not something you can be silly and frivolous with.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I'll just second everything that she just said, but I have a big commitment to, if my characters are dealing with something like that, to trying, and then my background is in counseling, but trying to send them to counseling and kind of sort of like the birth and thing for Julia, and that being really important. I think it's really important to take care of your character's mental health. Yes, so I do agree. Make sure that you're taking those things seriously if you're writing them. So thank you. I second that. That's all.
I would third that. I mean, I think that one of the biggest attaboy reviews that I was getting on the second and the third book was that I sent them to counseling, and they went to counseling together, and so people appreciated that. It wasn't just, oh, we have these issues from our first marriages, and instantly we're over them. Isn't that fabulous? Because that's not the way it works. And so they did work through a lot of that. I think that I'm going to go back to my biggest research tip is to just ask. I mean, if you don't know no matter what it is, ask people, and they will help you. I've gone out and, you know, I want to look at a car. I go and I ask somebody, you know, hey, can I get a ride in your car? Can I go drive around in it? You know, with the FBI, I did that. I went to a boat show and found a boat that I wanted one of my characters to have, and I wanted to be able to see it. So I think that if you can ask people, they're more than willing to help you, because they think it's cool. You write books, and it could end up in a book. Yeah, they'll help you. So I think that that's the number one thing, that we're afraid to ask for the information.
I think you bring up a really good point. Is a lot of time we get scared to ask or to seek out the advice that we need, and we forget that people love to share what they know. That they feel really excited about that. So more than likely, if you're looking into something, even if the first person isn't excited, the second or the third person is going to be really, really excited to help you out with your research.
Definitely.
All right, so maybe we wrap up by just doing a quick kind of what's going on with us writing-wise. If you have anything to promo, which I think all of us do this week, which is exciting, or this month. So why don't we start with our guests? I don't know who you're pointing to, but I'm assuming you're pointing to Leanne.
I'm dancing.
Oh, you're dancing.
Okay, well, all right, I'll go first. So I have a re-release of Strangers on its book birthday, which is this Saturday, September 6th, which is also my birthday. So, yay! So that's going to be re-released, and then on the 16th, 10 days later, will be the novella, because Strangers is from Abby's point of view. Yay, Alexis!
Oh, look at
that. Bryce will be from Bryce's point of view, and so it's his novella, and it's coming out on the 16th. And then I have 2 more books coming for the rest of the year. I have the full-length version of, or a full novel, which is the 4th book in the Return series, called Returning Home, which is Clarissa's story. And then I have a novella that comes out on December 6th, which is RSVP, and it will wrap up the whole series, and I will be done with the Return to Me series at the end of this year. Yay!
Is RSVP the wedding?
It is the wedding.
You heard it here first.
I'm very excited about the RSVPing to the wedding.
I know, me too. It's going to be fun.
On. All right, Alexis Ann, why don't you hit us? Yeah!
Woohoo! Okay, I have the paperback for my T series just came out because the T series is done. All 5 volumes are complete. The paperback will be with me at my book signing in Tampa on September 13th. And I'm working on new projects right now. One Week in Wyoming comes out next week, so I'll let Julia tell you about that. Other than that, I have Script and Greg's book coming soon, but I have to finish writing them first.
All right, Mary Chris, what have you got for us?
Well, I have my most recent novel, How to Be Alive. It was out at the end of June.
Hold on. I'm just going to show you. Yes, this is what's happening on your screen right now.
Yes, if you look close.
I like to display people's books.
Yay!
It brings me joy. It brings me joy in life.
So, How to Be Alive is out.
Yeah, so How to Be Alive is out. And I am working on a novella that features two characters that were quite popular in that novel. 2 side characters, Zach and Sarah, are getting their own novella. I actually think they might also be getting a novel, but that's very early in the works. So I'm hoping to get that out in November. And my debut novel, Never Ending Beginnings, and its companion novella, Delayed, actually got a new look this month. So they have, or last month, we're in September now, so last month. So they have new covers, so they're all shiny and pretty with new clothes on. And you can check them out online. All my books are available wherever you like to purchase ebooks, and then the paperback that Alexis so nicely displayed with her expertise modeling is available on Google and Amazon.
All right. Well, my debut book and one of Alexis's many books is coming out next Tuesday, and it is called 1 Week in Wyoming. It's an anthology with 4 authors set in a ski resort in Jackson, Wyoming during the ski season. So right as the summer slows down, we're thinking about cozy, warm romances and sexy romances and hot romances and all those things, and it's all of those things. So we're really thrilled. I just saw the paperback proof that Alexis sent me just before we started recording this, so it looks great. It will be ebook, it will be in print also, and we couldn't be more excited about it coming out. And
fabulous!
And Leanne has read it, so there you go.
I loved it.
So, so we get a ringing endorsement. So yeah, we're very excited about that, and hope to be able to share that with everybody very soon, next week. So. That is us. That is all from us this time round. Oh my God, hold on. We have cover art. There we go.
Look at that.
We have cover. Very exciting.
Pretty.
Sexy. 1 Week
There
in
you go.
Wyoming.
So anyway, that's wrapping up first draft for this time round, and we will be back in October doing the same thing we always do, talking about books and writing and romance and women's fiction. We don't know what our topic is yet, so we'll figure it out and we'll let you guys know what it's going to be. But we're very excited, and thank you for everybody for watching, and we will see you next month. So, bye for now.
Bye.